Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today's very special guest is Miss Stacey Paulín. We're going to talk about life and career and a bunch of other things. We're also going to talk about purpose. How did you discover your purpose? Did it land on you? Did you walk into it? Did you trip and fall into your purpose? How exactly did that happen? Have you even discovered what that is? Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Please don't miss this show. TBR Live. Interesting conversation with interesting people. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Our very, very special guest today is Miss Stacey Paulín. We're going to talk about life, career. We're going to talk about just a whole bunch of stuff, and we just might finally get into some jokes. We'll see what happens. Thank you for coming to the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Riley. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. So, standard first question: who is Stacey Paulín?
Woo, that's a loaded question. I'll give you the abbreviated version, I guess. Stacey is I wear many, many hats, but I would say the word that describes me and kind of encompasses or encapsulates all the things that I do would be educator. And I've pretty much been an educator my entire life. My aunt told me years and years ago, she said, Stacey, when you used to come over my house and play with your cousins, you were always the one directing them what to do, how to stand, how to sit, where to, what to do. You were always the one kind of in charge and trying to set the example for your younger cousins. And I never remembered that, but I think I've always had that kind of position no matter where I go. I try to always lead by example and always serve as a source of education and edification. And so I think the word educator really rounds me out pretty well. I was a musician for the first part of my life, and I taught music for a little bit of time as well. I moved back to Atlanta after college and pursued my musical career for about a decade, and then decided to go back to school to pursue my passion of medicine. And I became a physician assistant. I work in the emergency department. I've been doing that for almost a decade. And then I kind of missed the arts. And I said, well, how can I bridge the gap between this analytical left side of my brain and the right side, my creative side? And instead of picking back up where I left off in terms of music, I decided to pick up dance instead. And that turned into a professional career as well. So now I'm a professional Afro-Latin dancer. I choreograph, teach, train all over the world. And my newest endeavor now is as a certified image and etiquette consultant. So I teach youth and young adults and professional women how to create a winning image that will help to enhance their impact and influence on the world. So all of the things that I do, all the things I've ever done, I'm just trying to teach people how to be the best that they can be.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, so holistic image consultant. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, so the pastor in me can't resist looking at all the words. So holistic. How do you see that when you think of that word or when you approach that word? How does what does holistic look like to you?
Holistic is all encompassing, all inclusive within context. And what I mean by within context, specific to what I do, is all encompassing and all inclusive pertaining to the skill set that I have. So, like I said, I have a musical background, I have a medical background, I have a dance background, and I'm using all of those skills, all of those experiences to serve the clients that come to me with my image consulting company. So it's an all-inclusive approach to image consultations. It's not just about the one, and I don't want to say this to sound elitist or anything, but I think a lot of image consultants focus on the outside. They focus on what you see, and that's extremely important. I talk about that all the time, but I think a lot of times the missing piece of that is what's going on the inside. And that's where my background kind of helps to make me a little bit different, because I can approach it from a medical perspective. I can approach that from an arts perspective. I am a woman, so my experience has helped to color the way that I treat my patients. See, my client. And so that's what I mean by holistic. I'm approaching image consultancy with a different lens, and it's an all-inclusive, all-encompassing lens. And what that does is it yields a better result because it's not just a one size fit all for every client. I'm taking in the totality of them and utilizing all of my skills to make them better.
Okay. Okay. I got you. That makes total sense. So I can't help myself. This is good stuff. So the right image, is it crafted inside out or from the outside in?
That's a great question. That's like which comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, yeah, right.
I, I think your question may be a bit easier to answer, though. I definitely believe that it starts from the inside out. The wonderful thing about image consulting, particularly in this period of time, is that we're beginning to bridge the gap between fashion and psychology, style and psychology. And if you understand that the way you get dressed in the morning, the way you put yourself together in the morning, the image that you want to present to people, the way you want to be perceived by other people is largely dependent on how you feel about yourself, how you see yourself, your experiences, what you think of yourself, what you think of other people, how you perceive your value, your worth. If you know and understand that, there can be no other answer than it starts from the inside out and goes out. It can't be that I put clothes on, the clothes make me feel better, the clothes make me love myself, the clothes make me XYZ fill in the blank. It has to be I love myself, I value myself, I perceive my value, and therefore I'm going to demonstrate that self love. I'm going to demonstrate that value. I'm going to demonstrate that worth with the things I put on my body and how I step out into the world. So it's definitely from the inside out.
Okay. Okay. So is it I know this is case by case, but on average, is it challenging to get people to understand that particular concept, or at least to see themselves how they really are versus the box or the image that other people have put on them? Is that challenging, or is it just case by case? So how does that work?
No, I think generally speaking, it is definitely a challenge. And I think a lot of that has to do with social media. It has a lot to do with imposter syndrome. It has a lot to do with comparing ourselves to other people. We're surrounded by beauty all the time, and we think what we perceive to be beauty is the norm, and it's not. We go on social media, we see pictures, we see videos, we see celebrity, and I have a anyone who knows me knows that I have a celebrity culture is like a thorn in my side, because what I think it does is it exalts people who are perceived to be perfect 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then when we try to emulate that and we fall short because we can never be perfect, it sets up a sense of you feel devalued. You don't feel as worthy or as valuable as you would, as you should, I think. And so, generally speaking, it is a hard sell. It is a hard sell because I think people want, number one, instant gratification, an instant fix. Just put me in some nice clothes and everything will be fine. That's an easy way to do it, but it's not the best way to do it. And it's not the most effective way to do it if you're really seeking a transformational process as opposed to just a transactional, put the clothes on and you're done. So it's a hard sell for sure.
Okay. Okay. So the word consultant, or the concept of consulting. So most people who are starting businesses, or they're rebranding themselves, or whatever the case, they are under the impression that they know what they want or how to get some things done. Is it challenging to deal with very strong-willed, headstrong. I know what I'm. Is that a challenge for you?
It's not a challenge for me. It's funny because I had a client the other day. We're going to start working together in a bit here, and she led with that. She said, "Stacey, I'm just going to let you know right now, I'm not the easiest client to work with. I'm going to give you some pushback. I hope you don't mind that. It's not that I don't trust you or I don't believe that you know what you're doing. It's just who I am."
Mhm.
And I told her, that's fine. That's okay. I'm used to it. I
Mhm.
understand it. And as consultants, we're not necessarily here to impose our will on our clients. We're here to essentially paint a canvas of options and say, okay, this is the goal that you set out for yourself. These are the objectives, and these are the ways that I can get you to those objectives. And I'm going to paint this canvas for you or create this toolbox for you so that you can pull from whatever tool you need at any given time to get from point A to point B. So some clients have issues with, you telling them straight out, this is what I think you should do. But if you approach it a bit more generally and say, okay, you can get the same result, but you can choose option A, option B, option C. I think they feel a bit more in the driver's seat that way because they're the ones making the choice. You're setting out the options to get to the end point, but they're choosing the vehicle that's going to get them there. So it makes it a little bit easier.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. So you mentioned being an educator. And I absolutely love educators. We do not get anywhere at all without educators.
Mhm.
So with everything that's going on right now, and I can feel the energy of an educator just pouring out of you. What's one area if you had your option, if whoever the president is calls you up and says, "I want you to teach some stuff to the people on this," what would be the one thing that you would choose from that and begin to teach us some stuff?
You're asking if someone called me up and said, you can teach anything,
Anything.
anything at all, what would I want to teach the most?
Mhm.
Hmm. I would probably want to teach a mixture of self-care strategy and coping skill. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So if you think about, and this comes from a very personal place for me. Last year was rough on everybody. I mean, it
Right.
was our lives were turned upside down. We had our means of socialization taken from us. We can't even go outside. We can't mingle. We can't gather. And then in the midst of all that, especially here in the United States, the uprisings, the killings, the
Right.
politics, so many things. I mean, it was just like a critical mass had happened.
Mhm.
I don't know if we'll ever live something like this again. Those of us who are living right now, I don't know if we'll ever experience anything like this again in our lifetime. Unbelievable what we've all gone through. It's
Right.
a very traumatic experience. And then I think about the children too, because they were taken out of schools,
Mhm.
didn't have their buddies to talk to play with.
Mhm.
Their means of socialization was taken from them. And now they have to sit in front of a computer screen for hours every day
Right.
and learn this way. I mean, kids love routine. They thrive on routine, and the routine was just, snatched from them.
Right.
So, given the trauma, we need some tools to help us heal from that trauma.
Mhm.
We can't just sit in trauma and steep in it and think everything is going to be okay. It's going to work itself out.
Mhm.
So I think coping skills are very, very helpful. And that's definitely something that I would want to teach.
Okay.
In addition to that, because of all the aforementioned stuff that I said, self-care strategy is equally important because I think sometimes we need to have a valve on our lives in terms of what we let in and what we let out. Some of us aren't built for politics and commentary. Some of us aren't built for marching and protesting. Some of us aren't built for um, watching the news and constantly seeing Black people undergo the types of treatment that they go through on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you constantly see that on a regular basis. It's going to affect you. So you have to know when to turn the valve off and say, okay, enough is enough. This is really affecting me. It's affecting the way I work, the way I live, my relationships with people. I need to turn this valve off and turn a little bit inward and take care of myself. Give myself a bit of grace, practice a bit of self-care, embrace my family and friends, as opposed to allowing these things to come in that are going to affect the way that I feel about myself and the people around me. So self-care strategy is very important. I find that people often don't even have one. They don't know where to start in terms of creating one. And then also coping skills, because trauma doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's ubiquitous. It's going to happen to you eventually. You know, my mom used to say all the time, everyone gets their turn on the wheel. It may not be your turn today, but tomorrow it'll be your turn. And so things may be going fine and well right now, but tomorrow when the trauma comes, when the suffering comes, how are you going to deal with that suffering? And so coping skills are very important in that regard.
Okay. Okay. So I think I know the answer to this question based on my own experience, but I want to get your thoughts about something. Healing. So how important do you think process of healthy rehabilitating yourself after trauma? That particular component, how important is it to your overall healing, the rehabilitation part of it?
How important is rehabilitation to the healing process?
Yes.
Or
So when we experience trauma, no matter what it is, it wreaks
Mhm.
havoc on our system,
Sure.
whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or whatever. And rehabbing, those parts that have been injured. How important is that process in your view to the overall healing?
It's paramount. It's paramount. I think a lot of us are walking around broken and bruised and hurt from past aggressions, past traumas 20, 30, 40 years ago. And they certainly affect you in the now. So if you don't fix those things, that's going to set you up for disaster. Absolutely. It's paramount.
Okay, all right. So let's shift gears just a little bit. Dancing. So when did it occur to you? Was there a moment when you decided, oh yeah, okay, this is all right for me? Did you do it for a while, or did you just show up one day and it was like, oh man, this is cool? How did that happen?
That's a great question. It's a funny answer. So I tell people all the time, my life has been like one serendipitous adventure. I find myself in different pockets, different markets, different subcultures, and I either take to them or they take to me, or it doesn't happen. And for me, it's just like I found a second home in dance. Again, because I had a musical background. And so part of that, there's a little overlap. You know, when you're a thespian, when you're in the arts, when you're in musical theater, you do a little bit of both. You've heard of triple threat: actor, singer, dancer. So depending on what your skill set is, you can maximize and capitalize on those things. Definitely, musician. I was a recitalist, I was a concert singer, opera. I did all of that. And dance was part of that training, but it wasn't central to that training. Pedagogy, technique, vocal apparatus, that was the center of that training. I remember I was in school and I just wanted to learn how to dance. Like Latin dance really intrigued me. I loved the music, which is what drew me to that particular dance. And it was like stepping into a world I knew nothing about. And once I stepped into it, I was like, this is it. Like this is amazing. But I did it as a social dancer first. I just did it for fun. I went out, you learn the steps, you learn how to follow and lead, and you just have fun. And it didn't become serious until I was done with school. I had moved back to Atlanta at that point in time. And a social dance turned into an audition. And I was dancing with the owner of a dance company. And he said, I love the way you dance. Will you please come and join our semi-professional team? I said, sure, why not? I mean, I have time. And I decided to do it. Well, the semi-professional position turned into a pro position. And that happened within a year or so. And then I got super, I don't believe in luck really, but my fortune, like the fortune gods were like shining down on me or something. I don't know. But I was at a social event one night and a world-renowned dancer was in the room and he saw me dancing and he pulled me aside and said, I want to partner with you. I want to start dancing with you. And that totally changed the trajectory of my dance experience. So from then on, I began partnering with him and traveling all over the place. From there, choreography, workshops, training, teaching, all of that soon followed. So it was very accidental. It wasn't intentional, but I loved it so much that, I just kept on with it.
Okay, I got you. All right. So I love talking to creatives. I love us. So what about being a creative do you love the most? What do you love the most about being creative?
That's a great question. I think it's the ability to be who or what I would like to be in real life, but I don't have the confidence to be in real life.
That's an
It,
interesting answer.
it gives me a sense of freedom, and I'll flesh that out a little bit. People will always comment on either pieces that they've seen me in or performances that they've seen, and they say, "Stacey, you're a totally different person off stage than you are on stage." And I agree with them. I am. Music and dance allow me a platform to tell stories about whatever life, love, happiness, joy, sadness, anger, whatever it is I'm dancing or singing about. But it allows me to step into characters that I cannot embody as Stacey Paulin, but I can embody and tell those stories as whatever character I'm playing or whatever character I'm portraying. So it gives me a sense of freedom in terms of exploration of emotions, ideas, stories, because I'm one person. I can't live all of the experiences that exist, but
Mhm.
I certainly can step into the shoes of this character that embodies or has experienced things that I will never experience: loss, love, in their own way. Of course, I've experienced suffering, I've experienced loss, love, all of those things, but we experience them differently.
Mhm.
And it gives me the opportunity to express in a way that I couldn't express on my own. And I really enjoy that.
Okay. Okay. I dig that answer. So being a creative and being a disciplined person. I bring it up because for me, one of the greatest parts about being a creative is the birth of the idea. It's
Mhm.
like when it shows up initially, that's really great.
Yes.
But the problem is once that idea shows up and you decide, okay, I'm going to do that. You can be in the middle of what you're doing, and then another great idea shows up. Yeah. So how important? Well, I'm sorry. How do you find the discipline to keep yourself focused while these other great ideas or great bursts of inspiration show up?
Oh, that's a great question, Riley. I think it has a lot to do with disposition and personality. For
Okay.
me,
Okay.
I I tend to be very one track minded, and I like to see my ideas come to fruition. So what I'll do is I'll have an idea. Let's say I have an idea for a new piece that I want to choreograph. I hear a piece of music and the I can close my eyes and I can see the movement begin to take shape, what it's going to look like on stage, who's going to move where, and all of that. I want to see that thing through to the very end before I put my eyes or my mind on something else. And so what usually happens is it becomes an all encompassing project where I'm thinking of this idea, I'm putting it down on paper, or I'm choreographing it, or I'm doing it, and I'm focusing on it 24/7, 24/7, and I can pretty well bang that thing out very quickly. I'm done with it, and then when I'm done with it, then I can move on to the next thing. Very rarely will I have a moment where I have just a burst of different ideas at once. Usually it's one big idea, and then I want to see that from beginning to end until its completion, and then I can move on to the next thing.
Okay. Okay. So once you've gotten to your place of completion and you're done with that particular project, do you completely throw the idea away? Do you just completely What's yourself of it? What's your method of moving on from one thing and one
That's
to
a
the
good
next?
question too. Yeah, so usually for especially creatives that I know, we're all pretty much the same. Like we will work a thing to death, and then once it's done, and you love it. You want to share it, you want to celebrate it, but that spark doesn't last very long until you're ready to move on to the next thing.
Mhm.
So I agree with you there. A lot of what makes creative so interesting is that we love the process of creating. It's not necessarily getting to the finish line and saying, okay, I created this beautiful thing and I'm going to love it and cherish it and celebrate it. That there's a little bit of that too, but we're so eager to get back to the creative process.
Mhm.
So for me, once I get to the end, I'm like, yes, great, wonderful. Okay, now on to the next. So I can get back into the creative process. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's the best part. That is the absolute best part
Yeah.
as well. Okay, so do you have a favorite in all of the creative things that you do? Are you the writer first? Are you the dancer or the musician? What's the tree in that process?
I think the tree is educator.
Okay.
It's so hard now. Music I put down some years ago, and I really haven't picked it up. I've thought over the past few years to pick it back up, and I've decided no, let's hold off, um, because the dance is it's taking up a lot of time. But I think the educator piece is the tree for me, and I that manifests itself in different ways. I think that's what it is for me. It's not that I'm 70% dancer and 30% everything else, or 70% PA and 30% everything else. I think it's educator 100%. And then it manifests as medical professional, as image consultant, as teacher, as speaker, as dancer.
Okay. Okay. Well, since you brought us back to that, I ask you something that I should have asked you before. Um, Teaching environments today. Is that a minefield? Is that a how does that? Because people go online, they look up stuff, and then they come to class and they know what they know. And as an educator, what kind of atmosphere do you think it is right now in terms of teaching?
Um, that's a general question. I mean, I think the wonderful thing about being an educator is that there's always you'll always find a group of people who are eager to learn.
Okay.
And I love that. It's all about really finding the community that's looking for what you're teaching. And I've been very fortunate in that regard in terms of finding people who are wanting what I'm talking about, who are eager to learn what I'm talking about. It can be difficult though. You mentioned Google because people can just go out and find information everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I find that you have to know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
You have to stay on top of you have to stay on your toes because you will get pushback. This
Yeah.
happens a lot to me in the medical space because I think a lot of people they enjoy the process of self-diagnosing. They want to go on WebMD and Google and research the rash that's on their arm. Oh, my arm is going to fall off. I need to go immediately to the ER. I'm going to die. And then they'll push back and say, well, do you think it's this or why don't you think it's this? And I'll often push back and say, well, why do you think it's this?
Mhm.
And they say, well, I don't know. I just read it. And I say, and that's the reason why you came to me. And that's the reason why I went to school, because I can look at that rash and say, it's absolutely not that. It's absolutely not that. It could be this, and it likely is this. And so there are some challenges in terms of pushback because I think education and not education, but knowledge is so ubiquitous at this point. You pull up a computer screen and anything that you want to know, you can find out in a matter of seconds.
Mhm.
But that ability should not conflict or devalue experience, training, understanding that as educators we have to have. We see this stuff all the time. We do it all the time. And so I don't compare someone like that to someone who can pull up, 5 causes of XYZ on Google. It's not
Mhm.
you're comparing apples to oranges.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit challenging in that way. But if you know what you're talking about and you know how to deliver, you know how to speak, you know how to teach, you shouldn't have a problem. But it's all about finding the community of people who are eager to learn what you have to offer.
Okay. Okay. The second part of that question is, who do you find is more receptive? Is not the word I want, but I can't find the word I want. So I'll use it for now till I figure out the word I want. Which group is more receptive? Old heads, the people in the middle, or young people?
Definitely not old heads. Definitely not. Those are the ones that often give me the most pushback. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I love and respect my elders so much. And I'm not necessarily trying to change them, but what I'm wanting them to understand is that our relationship is a mutually beneficial one. It's a symbiotic relationship. I learn from you. And yes, believe it or not, you could learn a thing or two from me.
Mhm.
It's possible. I do have, a lot of elders in my circle, given my affiliations. And the ones I love the most are the ones who recognize that the world is changing constantly. And what you may know, your skill set, your knowledge base, it, it's it's not that it's antiquated necessarily, but it may be phasing itself out and being changed in a new way. And it behooves you to understand how those things are being changed. And maybe someone like me or someone even younger than me can help you bridge that gap. And there's several people in my life that I can think of. Dr. Cole is one of them who really gets that. She's got a wealth of knowledge, very smart, intelligent, been doing, what she does for years and years, but she recognizes the world around her is changing,
Mhm.
that there are new things, new ideas that young people are bringing to the table, and she can benefit from understanding and learning those things. And so she reaches out to young people all the time, and I really admire her for that. But the young people, they're the most impressionable. They're eager to learn, as long as you know how to approach them. And it's
Okay.
a very, very, I won't say difficult, but you have to know how to approach them. You can't approach them as 100% peer, and you can't approach them as 100% authoritarian either. There has to be a mix of the two. You never want to be a peer of a teenager when you're an adult and you have a bunch of life experience, but you want them to understand that you know where they're coming from. You've been there and you can sympathize and in some ways empathize with them as well. Um, I love working with youth. I think my sweet spot in terms of youth is junior high and high school. I could work with them all day for free and I wouldn't complain. I would absolutely love it. They're so receptive to everything.
Mhm. Okay, very good. So with everything that's going on right now, everything that is happening, this question is kind of a left turn, but I really want to get your thoughts about you being woman, African American, have loads and loads of stuff, education, creative, the whole thing. Where do you fit in the world that we are in right now? You where do you fit in this whole thing that's going on
Oh, good. I don't even know how to answer that question. Where, as a Black woman doing all the things that I do, where do I fit in the world
right
at
now?
large?
Mhm. Having so much value that you can add to mankind. Where do you think you fit in?
You know what? I don't know if I can answer that question. I try to be as modest and as humble as I can. And my answer to that, because I've been asked a similar question within the art space.
Mhm.
And I guess the answer that I gave there would be similar to the one that I would give to you. And that is, I will leave that for humanity to decide. I will leave that for the world to decide where I fit in. The only thing I can do is magnify the skill sets that I have, make them the best that they can possibly be, make sure that people are aware of the skill sets that I have, the things that I have to offer, make them readily available. And if people are drawn to that in some way, if they are seeking what it is that I'm offering, then that connection will happen. I trust that that will happen. And so those connections or people touching base with me or me touching base with other people, I guess that's how I fit in. That's how it manifests anyway.
Yeah.
But I would have to leave that up for them to decide. I can't really say, this is where I belong. This is where I should be. I'm simply being who I am and embracing all of what I am and trying to magnify all of those things that I am to a point where I'm positively making a mark and leaving a mark on society. And so society ultimately will determine how I fit in to the tapestry that we create together as a humanity.
Okay. Okay. That's a good answer. That's good. I can live with that. Okay. So here's a more complicated question.
Oh,
I don't know. Well, maybe it is. We'll see. So, grade us if you can. Black men, white men, everybody who sees y'all in terms of how we're treating you. Are we seeing you for real? Are we appreciating you? Can you grade us? How are we doing in terms of how we are overall treating you? I'm talking about Black women.
I'm happy to grade you. And when I give the grade, if I may be allowed to expand, because I think you and your audience may be surprised. I would give men and the treatment of and their treatment of Black women, I would give you a grade of, I would say a B, not a B plus, but I would give you a B, and a B is good. A B is good. I'm not a feminist. I don't subscribe to the notion that men and women are equal. I believe in equity. I believe in fairness, but I don't necessarily believe in this idea of equality among or between men and women, because intrinsically and naturally we are different. I'm never going to be as strong as you. For an example, our strength will never be equal. Now, should we have equal opportunities? Sure, we should have equal opportunities, generally speaking. But I'm not seeking equality with men in that sense of, especially as feminists tend to talk about that. I'm not trying to devalue men. I'm the kind of lady, when it pertains to men, I think women can do a better job of treating men better. I would say that if I had to grade us on how we treat you, I would give us a much lower grade. I have never really had any issues, largely, with the way that men in my life have treated women. Generally speaking, yes, there are a lot of issues, but I don't think they're as bad as we make them out to be. Especially, one-to-one for me, but generally speaking, I don't think they're as bad as we make them out to be. Certainly there's some misogyny. Certainly there's some, there are spaces that aren't as equitable as they should be. But I think the grade of B is a fair grade to give. And I think we beat up on y'all a little too much. I really do. I really, really do. And I think sometimes we need to turn that inward and say, how can we be better women? And how would that change the dynamic between men and women if we were to fix us, as opposed to deflecting and say, well, you need to do this and you need to do this, and then maybe I would act a certain way. No. You got to turn that mirror toward yourself and say, what's going on with me? How can I fix what's going on with me? How can I be a demonstration of the change that I want to see in the world? And then maybe the treatment that I'm receiving will be a little bit different.
Okay.
I think a B is fair.
Okay. All right. That's the first time I've heard it put that way. Okay. Fantastic. That is a beautiful thing. Okay. So, with all of the tension that we have, over here and across all across the world, are protests really effective? And if so, how? And if not, how?
That's a great question. I think protests are definitely effective and they have their place. I think you need a combination, though, of protesting and policy. The two go hand in hand and they are not mutually exclusive. So you can't do one and then neglect the other.
Mhm.
They work in tandem. But protesting is absolutely necessary. I was fortunate to participate in several for the first time in my entire life last summer. And I became very, very involved in the uprisings. Don't necessarily agree with the damaging of property or person. I don't believe in any of that. But I think protesting has its place because it's a demonstration of your dissatisfaction. And people need to know that, and that needs to be demonstrated. And that's a great way to do that. It's a great way to bring communities together for one cause. It's a great way to gather, to fellowship. And it helps to spark conversations that sometimes we're afraid to have. And sometimes you have to make a lot of noise to get the attention on the topics that need a light shown on them. And I think protesting is a good way to do that. I think policy is a neater, cleaner, more acceptable way to do that. And I think that's why it's more easily palatable. I think protesting is a little bit edgy and it makes people uncomfortable. And that's the purpose of protest, is to make people uncomfortable. And so you need to have both.
Okay. All right. So the color thing has always been an issue for me. We'll save that for another time because it would just take too long to get into that. But the hate issue that we have, essentially the hate button. My question that I've asked a few people, I've gotten some very interesting responses from this. So if you have two men with their hand on the hate button, black guy and a white guy, okay, who should take their hand off the hate button first if we're going to get better in terms of how we treat one another?
That's an interesting question, and it's interesting the way you put it, because what you're setting up with that question is you're saying the onus to change hate is on who, is on whom, the white people or black people. That's essentially what you're asking.
The instigator in me can't help it.
Who's responsible for turning the corner, turning the page?
Because essentially you have to trust one or the other, or you have to do it yourself. So who do you think should do it?
I don't think it should be one or the other.
Okay.
I don't think it should be one or the other. I think it should be, this is a good question. I don't think it should be one or the other. And if either one decides, because I think it should be a decision that both would like to remove their hand from the button, right? But my decision to remove my hand from the button should be in no way decided based on what the other person is going to do. In other words, I'm not going to keep my hand here just because you got your hand here. I'm going to remove my hand because I don't want to hate you. It's too much time. It's too much energy. It's unnecessary. That's not the life I want to live. And I'm not going to base my decision to remove my hand from that button on whether or not you remove your hand from the button.
Okay.
So I would say neither and both at the same time.
See, that would be ideal.
Yes, of course.
Issue is somebody's got to trust there's something different. This is why I'm asking this. Everything that we ask for in terms of equality amongst the races, hate being removed, people being treated so bad for absolutely no reason at all. And I'm specifically talking about Black folk. How probable is it that we receive some actual change? And I'll just say in this country, how probable do you think that is?
I think it's highly improbable if we don't begin having very honest conversations about the history of this country.
Okay.
And we haven't had that yet. We're dipping our toe into the pool, so to speak, And I think the uprisings helped. We began having some very difficult conversations, but it revealed a lot to me personally, revealed a lot to me about this issue that white people have with discussing racism in this country.
Mhm.
I'm gonna put this out here because I've talked about this a lot last year, and I really haven't talked about race relations a lot this year. I think I burned myself out, but I'm excited to talk about it, to start talking about it again, because I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to. But I remember talking to a lot of people last year about this, and I remember a young man, a white man, came to my Facebook page, and he began having a conversation with me about, what was going on, and he wanted me to help him understand racism in the country and what was going on, the history of race relations in this country. And I had to explain to him, and I tried to do it in the nicest way possible, that that was not my responsibility to do that. This is my country. This is my country. Um, Certainly, I'm an African woman. I identify as an African woman, but I am an American because I was born and raised in the United States. I understand my history, but I understand my legacy also. And I understand my genealogy. And I know that this country belongs to me. White people don't think about those types of things. Their families came from Germany and Latvia and all these other places in Europe, but they don't think about that. They think they're American, period. That's it. They don't think about, they don't have any turmoil about their ownership in this country. And so what I had to explain to him is that it's clear that you don't understand the history of your own country. And yet you're coming to me to ask me to educate you on the history of your own country. And that's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility. I think until, and this was another thing that I had to tell a lot of people, even friends and family. I'm not responsible for educating you on race relations. And there are plenty of ways for you to help remedy the wrongs that are going on right now. It shouldn't take an uprising, it shouldn't take a killing, it shouldn't take any of that for you to find your place within the movement. If you truly cared about changing the landscape of this country, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you would have found your place in the movement. The reason you don't find your place in the movement, the reason you don't make changes in your behavior, the reason you don't challenge your family members when they say racist or misogynist or xenophobic things is because you're so comfortable and complacent with your position in society that you don't want to say or do anything that would jeopardize that. And the moment people realize that, and the moment I tell them that, they have to sit back and think, you know what? I'm sacrificing the safety of a person that I say I love. I'm sacrificing the lifestyle of this person that I love for the sake of having my lifestyle, being at the top of the hierarchy, not ever having to worry about being shot when I walk out of my house, not ever having to worry about driving and being pulled over by a police officer and being killed and never being seen. I don't have to worry about that when I walk out of my house. But my neighbor, my friends, my Black family members, whoever, they have to worry about that. So how do I reconcile those two things? And what am I going to do to change their plight? If you haven't made a move to change their plight, it's because you don't want to lose your status in society. And I can't countenance that. I can't countenance that at all. So I had a lot of conversations about that with people last year. And some of them went well and some of them did not. I'll leave it at
I can imagine.
that.
So in the Black family, in our own house,
Mhm.
colorism exists.
Oh yeah.
Some racism exists. A divide. There's a lot of pain
Absolutely.
in the house. So, how probable do you think it is to heal that stuff within our own house?
Again, I have to, I mean, is it probable? Yes. Yeah, it is. But it's highly improbable again, and I'm speaking to Black people here.
Mhm.
It's highly improbable if we don't learn or accept the fact that we are enough as we are. And it's certainly highly improbable that we'll make a change and make that better if we're constantly chasing whiteness. And I think a lot of us are chasing whiteness. Um, we're trying to live that paradigm that whiteness has created. We're trying to look like the standard of whiteness. We embrace those practices and those mores, if you will, as opposed to embracing and learning. First of all, learning our mores and practicing those mores. We pedestalize whiteness as opposed to pedestalizing our own values, our own ways, our own cultures, our own cultural proclivities. And so colorism won't change until we stop chasing, until we stop trying to be white. We have to stop trying to be white and just be happy with being Black people and recognizing that that's amazing and that is enough. We won't get there though if we keep chasing something that we think is far better than what we are naturally and intrinsically. So,
Wow, that was a great answer. That was a great answer. Okay, so before I let you go, there's a couple things I need to do, and then I'll let you get on with your day. First, I want to do a little bit of word association. I'll say a word, and whatever you say, first thing that pops in your brain, let it come out.
okay.
All right, father,
Love.
family,
Oh, comfort.
mother,
Unconditional.
children.
Baggage.
That's good. Oh yeah, that's good. Church.
Oh, fellowship.
Okay. Politics,
Divisive.
leadership,
Hmm. Transformational.
finance,
Security.
forward motion,
Hmm. Improvement.
culture,
Oh, goodness. Culture. Essence.
hair.
Storytelling, even better.
Okay. All right. So before I let you go, is there anything that you want to promote? Is there anything coming up that you want us to know about?
Not really promote. I'm everywhere. I'm all over social media. I have all kinds of things going on. I just wrapped up my first international speaking engagement, so I'm excited about that, and I have a few more in the books. I am always available to talk to anybody about almost anything, but certainly if you're interested in any, image consulting help, or you want to talk about dance, want to talk about medicine, anything like that, please look me up on LinkedIn, and my email address, you can email me at Stacey@urbanityalamo.com. And my website is urbanityalamo.com as well.
Fantastic. That's all we have for today. Thank you very much for being on the show. And
Thank you
look forward
so
to,
much. So much
look
fun.
forward to doing this again. All right. Take care. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.